Outer Wilds is a game that wants to teach you what it values in this life. People, relationships, and memories. Okay, that's my thesis, but it feels really formal, and it's not really my style, and it's my first big video, and okay, let's try this again. Hi, my name's Beholder, and before I start rambling about one of my favorite games of all time, there's a couple things I need to address. I'm going to be covering all of the base games, so the game is about discovery, and it's really cool when you go in blind, so please do. You need to play it rather than listen to an anxious mess scream in their room about a funny space game that made them cry. I do have the DLC. Where am I? What am I doing? When am I doing? Why are the lights flashing? Is the green flyer drugs? But that might be a video all of its own, so let me begin to explain all of Outer Wilds for just a little. Don't check the video length too long, but just for a little bit. Space! After you see who made it, there's this absolute masterpiece. It's just so good! It's so good! It's just the start screen, and somehow they've managed to make it beautiful, and it encapsulates the themes of the game. The small planet in the void of space, with only a fire to light it. The single fire's smoke rises slowly, showing that yes, in fact, it is space, and that no one can hear you scream. The orange text slowly degrades and splits apart over time. The trees slightly obscure the campsite. The stars in the background, along with the music. I've already said about them. I love them. It's all really breathtaking. I really love the little detail that save slots are called expeditions. It's really neat. I didn't really appreciate it until I died with the warp core and I waited through the credits and I saw load save instead of continue expedition. It really made me stop and think. It was surprisingly emotional for just being some words on a screen, and only 2 words at that. I had to start a new save to record my footage and see the starting dialogue, and it was really hard for me to do. That was my expedition. That was my adventure. I had a connection. It was weird, especially in a game where you don't really lose anything when you restart as long as you have a good memory. And so, you finally click the button to start the game. And boom! The most amazing thing happens. You wake up. You're under the stars and looking up at a planet you soon learn to be giants deep. There's even something breaking. It's all just really neat. And then you're just going. No pop-up saying, "Hello, this is Space Game, find the gnome, I talk to people, go to observatory." You find it all out really naturally. The first thing you have to do is look down. You're looking up at the sky after all. And by having the player naturally look down, it already has the joy of discovery kick in, because it's your choice to look down. So you have moments like, "Oh, there's a person!" and "Oh, there's a fire!" You can just walk down the path. You don't have to talk to Slate. But if you're just beginning, you're probably going to talk to him. Honestly, I don't know how you would miss them. I've never met anybody who has. Did one of you miss them? Anyway, they tell you this.
There's our pilot, back from your pre-launch camp out under the stars, I see. So it's launch day, eh? Seems like only yesterday you joined the space program, and suddenly, here you are, leaving on your first solo voyage. What do you say, ready to get this beauty off the ground? Anyway, you'll just need the launch codes from Hornfels Observatory before you can lift off. Just bring those here after you've said your goodbyes or whatever.
And boom! You've got your objective. Those of you in the audience with more brain cells than me, which might be more of you than you think, might have noticed that I didn't include any conversation choice dialogue, because I'm pretty sure that it doesn't affect anything. But it does give you a little more character building, which is a pattern in the game. It's really neat how this conversation tells you about the character of Slate. He's a mechanic from the way he calls the ship a beauty, but they also show some sort of disconnect with everybody else in the town, with the use of whatever. It might be why they're with you near the launch pad, not in town or near the observatory. There's also a space program, and he's probably in it by the fact he reminisces on you joining. It's amazing how much is told within a few lines of dialogue, and without highlighting anything like space program, like some games do, but only the fact that you need to go get launch codes from the observatory. Once you've found out what you need to do, you're off! Timber Hearth is designed in such a way that it's slightly linear, at least where you first wake up. It's not like a line you have to walk down, but they definitely haven't plopped you in an open field. It's an amazing form of a tutorial. The first thing you see is a quote-unquote flight tutorial. If this was an MMO, there would be a quest marker over the drone, but the thing that leads you there is just your own curiosity and the fact that there's another person to talk to. This is Micah. They're a tinkerer, not a soldier or a sailor. Rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief. The game basically tells you, hey, you might want to learn how to fly. It's a slightly important. It might just be me, but the model ship seems to pan and tilt really fast. Maybe it's because it's small, though it makes it very clear that you probably shouldn't do barrel rolls. The town of Timber Hearth is just so cute. The guitar music in the background is absolutely amazing, and it all fits together super well. You have an old man that teaches you that the space program is called Outer Wilds Ventures. Oh! That's the name of the game! There's a tutorial on how and what the signal scope is, which is just playing hide and seek with some kids. It's so cute with the small text of the quiet kid saying, I won, I'm happy. It's just so unbelievably adorable. The path to the observatory also lets you see some amazing sights that draw you towards things you should go see, like the platform that teaches you about little scouts and more about the signal scope. And of course, that one kid who throws the rock. We've all been little kids that just have the instinct to throw rocks. Just chuck them. Who knows what neurons are firing when the brain screams to throw the rock off a cliff, or at a wall, or off a cliff. You can throw it at a tree. Don't do battery. That's a crime. Other than making this tiny kid very, very relatable, it teaches the player that 1, spooky ghost matter exists and will hurt you, and also where to find ghost matter. There's also the zero gravity cave, which is what it says on the label. It's a cave that has no gravity. Wowza. It lets you learn how the jetpack works, and how it feels to be in zero gravity, and how to repair your ship. I love that the rocks mimic the stars, and the cave is actually designed to be in the center of the planet. I'm not sure if it actually works like that, but I love it! It's also nice that the character has a piece of dialogue about you fixing the satellite. They also tell you to go to the observatory, just in case you forgot. This is really the only time that the game lays the objective on thick, but I can forgive it since it's a short moment, and it's necessary to learn the game and get to the fun part. When you first see the observatory entrance, the first thing you see is the Nomai statue. It's ominous. It's the first thing that you see that's super pristine, like quartz. There's a gold necklace that's super shiny. It's a startling change, as it's obviously different from the Hearthians. Heck, it's different from the entire aesthetic of Timber Hearth. There's also another Hearthian saying that it's a new exhibit, pointing out how different it is. Also, as a side note, I absolutely love how they hide the crowdfunders' names. It's really cute. And they're literally founders of Outer Wilds Ventures organization. It only took me starting a new save file to actually realize that, but that might be because I have static electricity running my brain. The museum is really neat. It's basically your info dump spot where the game just goes, "Here! Everything!" It's kind of like foreshadowing, but it's natural. Of course, a society fascinated with space would collect things from their solar system. I used to volunteer at a local museum. It was mostly cleaning as, man, it gets really, really dusty. But I did give tours as well. It was a small museum, the observatory might just be bigger, but no matter how small it is, you can feel the love of history in the observatory, along with my local one. The game basically straight up tells you, hey, this is how gravity crystals work, and hey, quantum objects, they exist, without it feeling unnatural. I can see kids daring each other to go on the gravity crystal, or little kids being scared of the anglerfish. It's also where you figure out that you have a Nomai translator, so you can read the ancient text boards of the Nomai. I love how they designed the Nomai conversations, loops and swirls that all branch out. It sort of feels like your friends are having 4 different conversations in a Discord chat. It's amazingly designed. You would think you would get lost, but I only had a few times where I had to trace back the conversation. There's also a scientific model that you could see a science teacher bringing out, but probably on a smaller scale. It's about the sun going supernova, which definitely doesn't allude to anything at all. Nope, nothing could possibly be related to the game. I was fascinated by the idea of a supernova when I was a kid. Then again, I also told a flight attendant about the periodic table like it was a brand new thing that nobody had learned in high school whatsoever when I was really little. So it kind of tracks. The observatory also managed to get their hands on a quantum stone. They don't really know how all of it works, but it's a lovely touch that there's visible discourse over how it works. There's also a consensus on how it's incredibly creepy. When you finally go up the spiral staircase in the center, you get to meet Hornfeld, and eventually get the launch codes. On top of the observatory has Hornfeld's telescope and notes. You can see that he's incredibly invested in the field of astrology, and when he discovers that what he thought were stars are actually entire galaxies, he has to write that he has to sit down. And when you talk to Hornfeld, he states that he's been giddy all day. Maybe I'm just really susceptible to characters that get really hyper over things they love. Maybe that's because that's what I do. Anyway, Hornfeld asks you what you want to do first, and in my first playthrough, I thought long and hard over this choice, and the options I could pick. After I finished the game, I found out that this doesn't actually have an impact on the game at all. It was made specifically so players wouldn't get overwhelmed. That's so funny. Imagine offering a choice to a player, and it doesn't matter. They're just like, this is for your own good. Act like this has some meaning. It's also technically the only conversation that you need to have. So you finally get the launch codes, and you're off. You're finally ready to head off to space, on the great adventure, to the final frontier. Whoa! What? No! So, it turns out that the ominous statue is haunted, maybe? Magic? The player doesn't know at this point. And did it scare me or what when I first saw it? All of what you've seen so far, blasted back at you by a Nomai statue. It's such a good setup for a story. From the player getting a translator device to seemingly magic statues. It all shows the player that the Nomai will be a very, very important piece of this plot. The statue's eyes are now gold, along with being open, the third eye being the thing that shows you all the magic stuff. It's a little cliche, but the Hearthians have 4 eyes, so maybe it means that they're gonna go even farther than the Nomai. Maybe because they got to the eye of the universe after all? The Hearthian that was looking at the statue before is now hanging out, just down the path you need to head to get to your ship. After you tell them that the statue looked at you, he asks if you're okay to fly, as any reasonable person would. It's good that the game points out how insane what just happened is. Helps hammer the point. There's also a small child who asks if you're going to space, and if you're ever coming back, because feldspar didn't, which has the forwardness of any child. I'm not really the one to talk, as apparently I bit kids at the park when I was little. Feldspar was also mentioned as one of the founding members of the Ventures, so this kid asking you straight up if you're going to disappear, it evokes a sense of worry that not even the founders are safe from the ever-growing void of space. Going up the elevator has a feeling of nostalgia for me. You go up this elevator every time. Even its noise is familiar to me. It's a little weird that all the elevators lock you in place just in the center, which could be to prevent glitches and stuff. Elevators just seem to be the only place where the game goes, okay, maybe don't move. Don't move for a second. Which I guess is excusable. It's for short moments, but it feels like they could have let the player move around. But they did fix this in the DLC though, so they let me do my little hoppies on the elevators. And then you see the beauty. The ship! There's a Hearthian lumberjack that mentions the launch pad is flammable, which... yeah, that might be an issue. I love the architecture of Timberhearth. It draws a steady, bold line between the Nomai and the Hearthians. The spaceship itself is everything summed up in one. Parts of the ship seem to be held together solely with tape and spare wires. The back canister is surrounded by wood. Some of the planks are already out of place. The satellite dish near the top is hammered like it has dents all around it. The way into the spaceship is a tractor beam-like device. Everything related to gravity is this lovely blue color. Gravity crystals, the gravity tubes. I don't even remember any type of confusion on how to get into the ship, even though there isn't really a front door. The directional movement of the gravity tube might have helped with that, but I think it's quite ingenious. The inside of the ship is quite cozy. The small nightlight that the gravity crystal is to the pressure tank next to it, with what seems to be a patch made out of wood. The curtains that separate the pilot seat from the rest of the ship as if you would need privacy in such a small place. Little posters up about how you need the little scout and how trees can replenish your oxygen reserves. It feels like maybe Slate put them up to remind you how to stay safe. The cans of jumbo marshmallows next to the computer and on the shelf, one of them already open. The computer is an amazing way to display everything you've learned in the game. Like, sure, you could just memorize everything like I have, but if you say, have a busy life, and actually have a social life, and have to take a break from the game, it's a great way to refresh yourself, considering how intertwined the game is. A thought web map is a great way to visualize it. The pile of firewoods and different types of liquid. The ship feels full, it feels lived in, and you finally have your suit. And this is where you learn that you have 3 levels to balance: oxygen, fuel, and health. If you run out of fuel, you can use oxygen as a less effective fuel source, but not vice versa. The cockpit is simple. It's not Microsoft Flight Simulator at all. Pretty sure that some of the gauges don't even work. Yeah, no, I don't think this temperature gauge works. There's a little heads-up display showing whether or not certain parts of the ship are broken, which is important. Very important. There's a gadget that shows you which direction your rockets are firing and how powerful they are, which will become helpful. You can see patches on the chair, the colors don't quite match, and the seat's brittle at best. And of course, the beautiful, sought-after eject button! Big red button, go press! So after some bad decisions, you can finally take off. After about 3,500 words. The entire tutorial area of Timberhearth gets you to empathize with these strange little alien creatures that the writers have introduced you to. These are the people that you've known all your life, and despite only knowing them for tops 10 minutes, this place is inherently your home. These are the people that are sending you up to space. These are the people that you're bringing research back for. Taking off is a longer button press than you would think. It builds up a sense of grandiose, truly building up the importance of your trip. As you take off, you see the tiny town of the Hearthians below you, and probably have to adjust yourself because controlling the ship is one of the biggest problems. And finally, you're off, free to journey into space and hopefully not crash. Everyone's first trip is special. I went around Timberhearth and eventually found the Nomai ruins. They were glowy, so like a moth to a flame, I went to investigate. Yoo-hoo. When I first went there, I didn't know that you should always grab your suit, no matter the fact that the planet has an atmosphere. I eventually went back to the ship and picked up my suit to make the jump over the cracked bridge. I somehow dodged the waterfall and made it through the tunnel to the entrance of the mines. The way locks work in the game is incredibly interesting. When you look at a very prominent orb in the door, it starts glowing, the same color as all gravity lifts and crystals. When you look around, the orb tries to follow where you're looking, but eventually you look too far away and it drops and goes back to normal steel. I wouldn't really consider it a puzzle per se, because it's not hard, it's just more of a mechanic. There's a very obvious big track that the orb is in, making it not a large jump to try and drag the orb down it. And ta-da! The door opens! There's a rock outside that labels it as Mining Site 2B, which gives the player a hint about what the Nomai were doing here. The hallway down to the mines is lit with triangular torches, something not seen in the beginning town. There's a scene in a lot of media of a cave finally being opened, and the protagonist is backlit as the light finally rushes into the cave after God knows how long. Outer Wilds is a perfect example of this in the opening of the mines. It does it constantly. It's a perfect made adventure that doesn't feel like it was crafted by someone. It feels really natural. As the player walks along the catwalks, there's another waterfall going through a broken section of the bridge. When I played, I thought I could just jump through it, or maybe around it. Let me tell you, dear viewer, when I was plunged into the icy depths, it was the most disorienting thing I have ever felt. It was scary. I'm usually good with spatial awareness in video games, and in real life to that matter. But the forcefulness of the drop and the inky darkness of the underground lake, it was only lit by the gravity lift, made it feel strange and alien, which it is technically. At the top of the gravity lift, there was a message board left by the miners that used to be here. The board states that the Nomai were surprised by how much ore the Ash Twin project needs. Ding! We've got our first lead. And we should probably check it out, and also why the Nomai set up the mining facility here. Around the message board is these plates. These plates are a bit like a puzzle piece in the way they link together naturally. You walk up to the place that looks like it could take it, and the game tells you what button to press to put the plate in. Sure, they could open a message board, or they could, whoa, what the hell, I didn't have a bendy phase, I don't deserve this. So, the goopy black stuff is good, and will give you a vision of a place. Where is not exactly told. It's only hinted at by the images on the plates. This mechanic is incredibly clever. The Nomai have already been shown to be very, very advanced. Why shouldn't they have figured out VR Skype calls? And they didn't even need the metaverse. And after this, I left, back to my home. Maybe ship, sweet ship? You know what I mean. I decided to continue looking around, and I found a seed. It turned out to be from Dark Bramble, and another Hearthian was already planning to clear it. I shot my scout in the small opening just to see if there was an invasive plant or something that was causing the light. Turns out, no, it's a teleporter, and the scout signal was duplicated, and the signal scope picked up feldspar, someone who had apparently disappeared and maybe died long ago. So now, confused and worried, I left the crash site to go look for more answers. On the moon! It sounds so much like the final frontier, but there's already somebody there, an old man who seems to be forgotten almost. His dialogue straight up says so. It's heartbreaking that you have to leave them in the end. There's a giant crater, almost like the moon had been hit by an ice cream scoop. An ice cream scoop might be a good depiction, because it's filled with ice crystals from Dark Bramble. Chert, my favorite traveler, and I will die on this hill, makes note of it on a recorder lit by a small lantern. It's probably left there to drag a player's gaze to it, but I like to think that in canon, Chert just got really excited about something else and forgot to grab his notes and lantern. On my way back to the ship, sweet ship, I'm sticking with that, I found an old, decrepit, half-buried ship. I assumed it was ESKER's, the old man's ship, as they have a line of dialogue about older ships falling apart, but it's a neat bit of storytelling. Remembering the fisherman's story about Giant's Deep, I went looking, and what I found was water everywhere and not a drop to drink. When you first go to Giant's Deep, I know most people's experience is to scream, freak out, and nope the heck out of there, and that's exactly what I did. Dropping below the atmosphere to find tornadoes and a never-ending sea with a few islands is absolutely terrifying. After getting the heck out of Green Planet but Scary, TM, I saw a glowy orb in the distance that seemed to distort the galaxies around it. I'm familiar with the concepts of black holes, but this one was glowing with a bright light. In-game, they call it a white hole. Hold on, is this a real thing? Okay, so it's a theory. It might just not exist, but also it might, because everything needs a counterpart. Okay. But it does in this game, so I'm okay with it. As I looked around it and the things hovering around it, some music started to play. This song will send any Outer Wilds fan into a panic-induced trance, much like throwing a cloth over a birdcage. As I continued to look around, thinking it just to be part of the soundtrack, the floating objects around the white hole were more geometric, like those hexagonal pillars of basalt you see on social media every now and again. Not like anything on Timber Hearth. And then there was a noise, like a contraction. It's a sound that when you hear it, it's definitely the sound of a contraction, or more accurately, an implosion. There was a moment of quiet, as I suddenly realized I couldn't see the sun. It was gone, and then a boom and blue sparks. And suddenly the sun was back, and it was blue raspberry flavored. I remember a little bit ago seeing a Tumblr post about, hey, if you see the sea suddenly disappear, don't go looking for it. It was something about a tsunami, I think, but I think it might have a meaning here. Just by sea, I mean sun, and by disappearing, I mean turning into blue raspberry slushy. As the plasma catches up to you, everything fades out to white, then black. You see what looks to be the Nomai face. It has 3 eyes like the original magic statue. And you see your adventure play in reverse. Everything down to the statue opening its eyes at you. And then the most amazing thing happens. You wake up! In games, we die and respawn. And honestly, we don't think much about it. When I die in Dead by Daylight, I go back to the lobby, I give some callouts to my friends, check the blood web, and fix my loadout. I know that each time the survivors die in lore, a little bit of their soul gets taken away. But I'm detached, it doesn't really matter to me. But when the sun explodes, or I just end up being dumb, it hits harder than it should. There isn't anything truly lost, but it's still a setback. It's the loss of time, even though you truly have forever. It asks you the question of, can you do that again? And do you know your way back? When that song comes on, I have thoughts of desperation already in my head. Read the messages faster, or get to the portal faster. In the corner of the screen, the game reminds you that you still know the launch codes. They haven't changed, and the elevator up to the ship is right in front of you. Everything is still the same, but you have more knowledge. When you approach the lift, Slade asks you if you should get the launch codes. When you tell them that you think you died, they remark that you must have been a bad dream. They don't ask how you got the launch codes. Slate's just more interested in if the new cockpit stays attached. So you're off again, flying your ship across the cosmos, and it becomes slightly clearer that you're in a time loop. The sun explodes, Slate pointing out that you shouldn't have the knowledge yet, but the game won't stop you. It's the game holding up a blurry sign that you can tell says time loop, but they won't explicitly say it yet. Time loops are a tricky thing in storytelling. Depending on how you write a character, you eventually have to ask, how long until they break? How long until they snap and start doing insane things to get out of the time loop? With a game, though, the player is the character, but also the game can be designed to stop the player from doing certain things. Be too limiting, and it doesn't feel like a puzzle anymore. Feel too open, something's going to break, or worse, the player gets lost and fed up with the game. My first trip was of careful exploration and of interesting discoveries. Really, everybody's first loop is incredibly unique. I had a friend who, well, his first loop was chaotic. We're both similar in personality, I can assure you, we're friends after all, but the way we tackled the game is different for a multitude of reasons. But I think that might have been mostly because of the small differences that even we cannot see within ourselves. And I think that stands for the entirety of the game. So, after a little while and one too many ship crashes than I'm willing to admit to, I got my space legs. I figured out how to jetpack jump, how hard I can smack into walls without dying, how hard I can fall, and that you suffocate surprisingly fast. The middle stage of the game is where you figure out the planets of the game. I like to think about each planet of the game as like a puzzle box. Like the puzzle of Giant Steep is suddenly finding out that you have thalassophobia. The puzzle of the Hourglass Twins is time management, but instead of Burger being burnt, you get crushed to death between sand and the tunnel roof. The puzzle of Brittle Hollow is learning air movement controls, and confronting the fact that somehow, some way, you're going to fall, and that might even be useful to you. The Interloper helps you confront your mortality, and Dark Bramble teaches you how to piss your pants! It's also the stage of the game where I realize that there's a different wake-up sound when you suffocate instead of being blasted apart by the sun, which is disturbing. Unlike most games, it feels like you can't affect anything, at this point at least. Whatever you do, it resets in 22 minutes. One of my other favorite games is Ultra Kill. Sure, it is in a level format, so you finish the level and everything resets, but you get points and a score. It's tangible somewhat. The game tells you that you've completed a level, that you've done it, and maybe even done it well, or not so well. With Outer Wilds, you get told that you learned something, and it's only when you check the computer in the back of your ship. It's not tangible, really. It's just memories. The game can be viewed as a bunch of levels, interconnected with very thin strings. To be fair, the closer you look, the stronger those threads are, with the first planet in my mind being the Hourglass Twins. So, the twins are named as such because they literally act as an hourglass for the game. But in-universe, they were named after the natural cycle of sending back and forth a bunch of sand. In the Ember Twin, the Orang one, you can find my favorite traveler, Chert. Chert is a type of wait, hold on, wrong script. He plays the drum, supplying the backbone to the song that all the travelers play. He's also been put in charge of updating the star charts, and he tells you that you can tell what a supernova is by the explosions of the little stars in the sky. He also has dialogue that changes depending on the time. The closer you get to the sun exploding, the more and more he realizes what's about to happen. The sad thing is, he's not in the time loop. He won't remember anything. He just has to relive the pain over and over again, not really knowing that he'll be okay on the other side, truly. He blames it on the star charts, that he was too focused on them, not about the world around them. He's, ironically, the only traveler that's correct. Even the player the first time around doesn't know what's gonna happen. And in his sudden anxiety, he speaks the truth. The universe is ending. In the final minutes, he asks if you're going to sit with him. The music is pouring in. The sun is collapsing, but it's quiet. It's the type of quiet that happens when there's too much noise. So much that it all just fades away. There's no voice acting in the game, and that usually makes the character for me, but I want to sit with him. I want to keep him safe. If you tell him that you're in a time loop, he holds solace in that. You can't choose the other option if you talk to him again. You could fly away, jump in your ship, try and go somewhere else in the time you have left. It didn't feel quite right to me. The rest of the planet has this sort of quiet, as eventually the sand runs out. The hourglass stops. The Sunless City is an underground Nomai city, abandoned to say the least. The tunnels that lead there are dark and small. I don't have claustrophobia, but it started getting to me in there. The tunnels are such a contrast to the Nomai escape ship that you go through to get to them. The ship is clean, bright, well lit, and futuristic, like it was made out of quartz, much like the statue back on Timber Hearth. The tunnels are winding, like they were all made by different people all at once, like they should be bustling. But they're not. When you're going through, constantly searching for the next path to go through, only to find it blocked by stalagmites, so check the other path, cactuses, panic, see what must be another passage. It looks like the same one I came from, but it's not blocked anymore. There's a small creeping fear as the sand also creeps in. The tunnels slowly fill up. What is once a tunnel doubly as tall as the player suddenly becomes claustrophobic. And there's no pause button, there's no switch that the Nomai made to stop the hourglass. It's about time. If you run out, the sand doesn't stop. Neither does the roofs of the cavern. And so your helmet cracks, and you're squished. And when I tell you that I yelped flipped when that first happened to me. I did not expect to die that way. They animated it and everything. It's kind of terrifying that they thought that through. The sunless city is huge. It feels a bit like Babylon with the garden on the left. The buildings are the same as they are on the surface. They feel a little more protected, though. There's also a couple skeletons. Also, a lot of ghost matter. That's important. There's all sorts of bits of lore, just life that they were really living here. They were thriving. Before you even enter, you see the skeleton of an anglerfish just out of reach. When you do navigate the tunnels to it, you find out that actually kids used to play around it. This terrifying thing was used as a playground. The adults obviously researched it. It turns out that's mainly what the Nomai did, but the kids incorporated the fact that the anglerfish were blind into their game, which is just so cute. This little detail about a children's game teaches you the main mechanic when it comes to the anglerfish, and at that point, I didn't even know that the anglerfish existed other than the museum, and yet it was teaching me a lesson that I didn't even know I needed to learn. The opening of the door to the sunless city feels weighty, though it's opened with just a look, because it hasn't been opened for years, probably. The rooms of the city still feel haunted despite the Nomai probably being long gone. It feels like they've lived here. The Nomai were people. The true puzzle is the giant pit in the middle of the sunless city. A maze of tunnels filled with twists and turns, and a constant claustrophobia. 'Cause oh god, the sand's still coming in! There's an electrical wire running up and down the pit at the center, hinting that you might just want to jump down. I can't stop complimenting Outer Wilds on the way it teaches the player without really teaching them. This is one of those moments. The wire is glowing the same color as all of the gravity equipment. Getting to the end of the wire isn't required for the game, but you're already here. Why not go down the pit and follow it? The tunnels before were scary, but these are worse. You have less time to get through, as you've already spent time getting to the sunless city, and worst of all, it feels darker. Sure, there's something to follow this time, but it's worse. It dips through walls, making you lose track of where you're supposed to go, if only for a moment. Then there's a pit and a sandfall that stops you from getting to the exit. The only way through is to wait for the cavern to fill up so you get lifted up by the sand beneath you. It's a checkpoint. It's the game setting a stopwatch and saying to sprint. It brings up the question of time again. Just before you get to the elevator to a laboratory of sorts, there's a tunnel across the apple core center like of the planet. Somehow it escaped from the erosion of the falling sand. Probably something to do with the Nomai. After jumping up the rubble, because of course the elevator doesn't work, you enter the high energy lab. It's pristine with silver and blue. There's more ore blocks and a bunch of Nomai scrolls. Whatever wrecked the sunless city never hit this place. Hee but I did. Oh look, I got an achievement for that. Even with the hum of all the magic and the breaking of space-time, it's still really quiet for some reason. You find out that the Nomai had a plan to use the sun's explosion to power a black and white hole transporter, which sounds like technobabble, but you have a lead now. The sun station blows up the sun to generate energy, and that does time travel of 22 minutes? At this point, I ended up Googling how long a loop was because I thought I might have something. And I was right! There are other scrolls around about the escape pods, the signal, and the quantum objects. But it's also different from the outside. When you open up the door to the rest of Ember, you're hit by red and orange of the sun, and of course, the sand. The most interesting thing about these twins is that as one closes and slowly crushes you against the roof, the other opens. There's towers in a ring across the surface of the ash twin that are slowly revealed from the sand. These towers are styled after each of the planets. Twin towers. Wait, no, I didn't mean those! For the ashes, one that looks like a tornado for Giant Steep. The Nomai really went wild with these designs, but most importantly for my current train of thought, there's a tower built like a cartoon sun, filled to the brim with cactuses. Fun fact, the first time I tried to get through the tower, I didn't know there was a time where the sand covered the cactuses, so I just tried to jetpack over them. It didn't end well. Each of the towers have little teleporters that the Nomai made. The sun one does not lead you to the center of the sun, but to the sun station, a satellite orbiting around the sun. You can, of course, try and land on it. Hold on, let me try again. Did I mention the temperature gauge doesn't work? Okay, look, it's a little hard. But the teleporter's there for a reason. When you get there, it's sort of broken. It's very different from the high energy lab. It's built out of the same reddy orange stone as the rest of the towers. Or maybe that's just the sun, because it's right there, like right next to you. There's messages of distraught, that it doesn't work, that it doesn't even fire, that there's no off switch. The sun station doesn't cause the sun to explode, and so the only thing left to do is fly back. Fly away. But wait, your ship is still on Ash Twin, so have fun waiting for the teleporter to line back up. Or you could just jump out and try and fly back. Oops, gravity! And so you sink directly into the sun, and the loop starts again. Wait, I forgot to talk about the gravity cam! After recovering, you go back to the towers, and maybe even the twin towers. And if my stupid baby brain puts it together right, you have to be pointing at your destination. And that means the sand would be directly on top of you. The game basically has you put together that you are going to have to run directly under a giant column of sand and hope you time it right so you can not get sucked up to the other planet. And when you do, you're rewarded with the inside of a sphere. As you walk along, the stars of rocks look back on you. This is the Ash Twin Project. This is what the Nomai were excavating Timber Hearth for. There's more Nomai statues here, with more messages. By moving a ball around, you open a sphere and shut off gravity, and reveal what this was truly built to protect. The warp core. Made of both black and white holes, this is what's powering the loop. The thing that's powering the constant suffering of having the loop restart. Maybe even the sun blowing up. This should stop it all. Everything's okay. And so, you take it, go back along the inside of the core, and appear back to the slightly less sandy twin planet. And so, maybe you can explore, plug this core in somewhere to unlock more info. As you fly off and look back at the swelled red sun, in confidence, you can still fly off, but you still hear the music. The music of the end. It's the same, nevertheless. The sun is swelling, the music is building as well, and suddenly, you hear the sucking noise of an implosion. The sun's blowing up again. The warp core wasn't powering the explosion, it was just powering the statues of the time loop, the only thing keeping you alive. And so, when the sun overtakes the universe, the screen goes black, and you and I don't wake up. You can load a save. The game makes it explicit by gently delivering you back to the start screen. You messed it all up, but we have to keep going. The player does at least. The Ash Twin is about those silent moments that you share with friends. That, despite the loud, you can still find those single moments in your memory that don't have any backing track, truly. And that's what's really beautiful. Alright, where to next? Alright, Waterworld. Giant's Deep is spoken about like a legend. It has such deep cloud cover, mind you, that it might as well just be a mystery. Just entering Giant's Deep has you blind for a second. The thick cloud cover not only makes you feel disoriented, but also sets this up as a wet and rainy and watery hellscape. There are tornadoes and rain, and more importantly, the ocean. These islands are sandy with lots of trees. Also, the gravity is incredibly high, leading to your jetpack feeling more like a sneeze than a rocket. Everything looks normal, following the pattern of destroyed Nomai ruins and gravity magic columns. Everything's fine, but there's a tornado approaching, and I hope you brought your suit! Flung up into space, you suddenly understand why these gravity tubes were installed by the Nomai. But in that small moment, you're weightless. It's like the moment before you breathe out. Because suddenly you're flung back down to Earth and get flattened like a pancake. Despite being spoken about like a legend, this is a goddamn mess! You're being flung up and down, there's so much water, I just got hit with an island, please don't hit the squids, how did I just manage to hit something hard? I'm in the ocean! But eventually, you get your footing, and you can start to explore other islands. Following a couple of paths and the right island, you eventually find somebody else who's part of the Outer Wild Ventures. Gabbro, which, the fact he's named after the slow-cooling type of rock, because he gives off stoner vibes. At least, the first time I met him. Might be wrong, considering I've never actually met a stoner. Turns out he's aware of the time loop, but he's not doing anything. With a small area, he's flung up into space and then flung back down. Without any real change. He doesn't really care. I know a lot of people who connected with him pretty heavily, but I just don't connect with him for some reason. Maybe because I didn't speak to him a lot. Maybe it's because I never used his ability to reset the loop. Sometimes it's like that, where a person is there in your life, in a story, and you can recognize them, but you never quite click with them. I'm happy they were here in the story, but I just can't bring myself to pick them as my favorite for some reason. But you have to keep moving, right? Don't want to get hit with the tornado. Okay, so after looking around and using my 2 brain cells and static electricity, I decided to check underneath the island due to the grate up top. They were teasing me. A lot of games do this, going,
"Ooh, there's some over here. Come see this, you don't want to miss it."
but this is used super well all over the game. It feels like I'm given a treat every time I get to the place that's hinted at. And when I do, it's like finding a chest behind a waterfall. It's a video game and there's a waterfall, so of course there's gonna be a chest behind it or something. But in Outer Wilds, it's even better because it's more knowledge. It's another piece of the puzzle that you're getting. I also had a friend that had the island fall on top of them when they were swimming around, and I guess that is one way to find it. Walking into the workshop below the island is like walking into a treehouse, though it's a little more formal, as the Nomai were quite neat and tidy, all things considered. But this is where they made the statues. The statues that are magic? Something about memory magic. We're gonna put a pin in that. I swear it's important. Please, I swear this is going somewhere. The planet itself, not just the memory statue workplace, is guarded. Not by enemies, or anemones, considering it's a planet of water. It's guarded simply by the water itself, with a current so strong that your ship can't breach it. So it turns out that water doesn't beat fire. Water beats water. And I'm gonna be honest, I accidentally figured out the tornado by, you know when you're flying around, and then you crash, and then water! Wait, hold on. And now, after going the wrong way, you're under the current, which I'm sure is explained somewhere. But now there's another problem. The core. So hot tip, don't run into it. I'm a sucker for electricity themes, but man, you ever lose complete power to your ship while you aren't wearing your suit and suddenly you realize that the crushing force of the ocean is real and will kill you? It just took me so long to realize you have to get out of your ship with your suit, just in case. And just ride with the jellyfishes. You can put this together through finding an offshoot in the void, and then putting it together through something about the jellyfishes being rubbery. But I found that, and didn't put it together, because I'm a little silly. This is the only puzzle I had to Google, because I genuinely had no clue what to do, and smashing myself against the ball of dense water repeatedly didn't seem to work. I actually feel really bad about it? Sure, it might just be the anxiety disorder, but I was on such a streak. I broke it. I felt almost guilty, but turns out the Nomai didn't need Google or something because they're down here too. The breaking satellite you see every time you wake up from the loop transports its info down here, and you find the coordinates. Funny half arrow, ribbon, and 3/4 of an infinity symbol. I no joke planned to get a tattoo of these. They're simple enough that they could just be a numbering system. Maybe one that the Nomai used. They might just be used in a situational way because the eye of the universe is always moving because it's a quantum object, right? It's just a really cool thing, and I like my theory because it just makes so much more sense because it doesn't fit any other Nomai text we've seen. So it makes more sense if it's a situational type of coordinate where it's like, oh, actually, it's next to the Applebee's, you know? Like, that's where you're gonna find the Eye of the Universe, kids. Go down to the Applebee's. And I would argue that this is what you came here to find, no? This is incredibly important. This is what the entire game's been building to. This is the crescendo before the crescendo. But there's still so much to talk about. There's the tower that teaches you how to use quantum objects, which I would argue is a masterclass on how to do puzzles. And there's a Nomai structure, but it's okay. It's okay for those to stay silent. I would argue that the core theme of Giant's Deep is the secrets between people. The secrets you find by doing silly stuff, like getting a planet crushed in on you, and learning about each other on the way. It's okay if you don't find smaller secrets or make a big deal out of them, as you're sure to find them as you go along. But what matters is that you found the core secret, the ticket to ride. Literally. It's scary going into something so hidden, and the planet where you genuinely cannot see the surface at first. But you came to understand Giant's Deep. I came to understand Giant's Deep. The tornadoes are my friend, giving me a breath of fresh air. The water is simply existing, it means me no harm. Sure, the jellyfish shock you, but that's their self-defense mechanism after all. And anyway, they help you get to the core, and that's why we keep secrets, right? To protect ourselves, and to protect others. But eventually, we can work past that. And so, after that really philosophical not conversation, where do we go next? Maybe to a planet where you can literally go beneath the surface? Like how you learn people? Oh my god, I'm on the planet already? I deserve to be plunged for my writing crimes. If Giant's Deep gave you a fear of drowning, Brittle Hollow teaches you to have a fear of falling. It's also another planet with a timer. Well done. Brittle Hollow is, did you guess, inherently brittle. Its crust slowly falls away over the 22 minutes, creating harder and harder jumps for you to make. This is only encouraged by Brittle Hollow's moon, also known as its lantern, spewing fireballs like it's a Mario boss. You can find small structures on the surface, nomai structures at that. The planet is really flat, perfect for building, and you can also find gas canisters, just in case. It's also next to one of those glowy spiral things again. With gravity similar to Timber Hearth, if a bit lighter on average, it's easier to skip across its smooth surface until you find something interesting, like a tower. You can't get in. Trust me, I've tried. But there's a river, and as you go through, or maybe follow the stairway down, the crystalline core of this planet gets revealed. Hexagons are lovely when used in any design, and this is a sphere full of them, perfectly fitting together of different lengths. And the lighting hits just right. Also, the lighting in this game is just lovely. Like, oh my god, it's so pretty. And then you see the first one fall. It's like seeing your first zombie in Resident Evil. Instead of being bitten, you might get crushed. Or the platform, don't worry, we'll get to those, might just give out beneath you. And maybe you have hope. Maybe there's a gravity spiral you can hop into. So over the edge, you have to look, you have to see, and the void sees back. The light bends and the crust crashes into it and it disappears. So in the hanging city of yellow stone that stands out in the color scheme of deep blue and orange pink, you stand. There's a lot of gravity gems being used here. You can get here by walking along the inside of the crust over the constant pull of the black hole. There's plates infused with gravity magic that you can walk up, and that elevator stair combo is broken halfway up, so there's no way fully up the tower, even with the jetpack jumping, so you should probably explore the city. The city itself is huge. It's a sprawling ghost town, much like the Sunless City. There's skeletons everywhere, along with decay hitting itself along the paths. There's entire districts dedicated to learning, to education. There's complex mechanisms that still work. There's so much knowledge all at once. It's a huge burst. In fact, there's another nomai escape pod you can find nearby. Like the hanging city is the vines and the escape pod is the seed. The Black Hole Forge literally dunks a nomai building into the black hole in the center of the planet. That's so cool! It's the place that makes the black hole core that you find powers basically every single nomai device, or at least half of it, with more and more information focusing into your mind in the memory map, with more and more burnt orange rock falling through. Right across the bridge of houses is Rybeck. Rybeck, my beloved. He plays the banjo, probably because he has more fingers than the average Hearthian. In fact, you've already heard this song, because I've already played it for you. In this small little overhang, Rybeck is here, playing his campfire song. He's nervous, incredibly nervous. I would be too if I was hovering over a black hole with a constant threat of maybe getting spaghetti-fied. I understand his anxiety. As you look around, calmly resting with Rybeck, you might pull out your scout like I did. Marvel as the little scout arcs with the black hole's pull and gets lodged into one of the overhangs. And then you see it. I saw it. A stability rating. And it's pretty low, with a constant sense of maybe losing it all. I went back to see the rest of the hanging city, only for it to fall, with me into it, into the black hole! And yet, the loop didn't end. In fact, I was in space, and the hanging city was fractured around me, without gravity. Holy god, I'm having a brain blast. No gravity means I can go up the tower, cause then holy smokes, by god, there's so much knowledge! The nomai's entire point in life was to try and find the Eye of the Universe, to go on a voyage. After dozens of scrolls, I don't think I ever found one that said they made it. They had perfect control of quantum objects, the ability to teleport. Even out here, there's a satellite that can teleport you back to Brittle Hollow. In fact, the best way to explore Brittle Hollow is to fling yourself into orbit around the black hole and hope you don't somehow get flung into a hard object and just teleport back when you fall into the black hole. The entire puzzle of Outer Wilds is being okay with things falling apart, being okay with the system taking its course. You gain access to the tower by waiting for it to fall. You access Rybeck by getting and arguably falling through the crust. Sure, you can get to the tower by flying to it once it falls, but it's faster to fall with it. With reading this, I see Brittle Hollow as a metaphor for learning more from friends or relationships because of the falling out, and ending up better because of it. None of Brittle Hollow has disappeared. Sure, it's in a different form now, but I think that's okay. You've learned more. And the planet, in a sense, has also learned more. You've gotten better by learning failure can be rewarded. The planet is coming to an end, yes, but it will simply reform around the white hole in the most likely idea. Even if it doesn't, that's okay. You've learned something. Rybeck's probably learned something despite the anxiety. It's okay that it's fallen apart. In some of these shots, you may have seen a gray, almost misty moon. This is known as the quantum moon. The Nomai were fascinated by it, considering one of the biggest puzzles in the game is how quantum objects work. It's pretty important. I embarrassingly only found the quantum shrine on Giant's Deep after I found the chords to the Eye of the Universe. But I think that's the beauty of the game. It's truly an open world. There isn't any markers unless you make them. So you're really just told to pick a direction. Think about Breath of the Wild. Once you get out of the Great Plateau, you can go anywhere. It's heavily suggested that you go talk to Impa, though. Look at Elden Ring. Once you come out of the church, sure, they haven't really told you where to go, but also the campfire is pointing somewhere, and there's a path, and there's always a suggestion of where to go. There's something to latch onto, and more likely die to. I'm not saying either of these games are bad. I love Breath of the Wild, and I'm absolutely blown away with Tears of the Kingdom. Elden Ring is also amazing, though I think it's given me multiple stress-related disorders. You can get through the entire Quantum Moon before you go to the Tower of Quantum Knowledge. You can somehow guess the chords to the Eye without even touching Giant's Deep. Or you can be like me, get to the end, have the last moment music start playing, and just start moving the ball around in a panicked fashion in the last ship, screaming as you don't know the chords. That was a very fun experience. The Nomai are built as an alien race to look up to in a way. They fit the stereotype of super future aliens that aren't here anymore, that you see in a lot of movies. But throughout the game, you realize it's not like that. They burned out. They're all gone. The candle's still here, but the wick isn't on fire. The only Nomai you find might just be dead, as you find Solanum on the Quantum Moon, alone. You have quite a journey to get to her, figuring out the exact combo of planets and light flashing to get to the North Pole, and your video gamer mind expects there to be a huge revelation, one with great consequences, one with some ending to it. When I first got to the Quantum Moon, I thought this was the final part. This was how the game ends, this is what it's been building up to. It's the Quantum Moon, it's been there when I wake up and blink. The sun station wasn't the end. The sun station didn't even blow up the sun, so that it had to be elsewhere. At the time, I didn't have a clue as to where the warp drive was, so I thought the high energy lab had to be the end of it, but it wasn't. It was all pointing me to the Eye of the Universe. So I thought, since the Eye was related to quantum objects and it was called the Quantum Moon, and the Nomai seemed to be obsessed with it, it's got to be the end of the game. But it was just her, just Solanum. The worst part is, you can find her corpse when you land. She's already dead. She's still alive. She's part of the Quantum Moon herself. She's Schrodinger's cat in a perfect form. Another thing that I only thought about when writing this is that she isn't named after a stone like all the other travelers. She's named after a type of nightshade. It makes the separation between them and the other travelers a lot more real. A lot of players won't even find Solanum. She'll be in the world, sure, but not in the final campfire circle. It felt odd. It felt like it should be the end. The game didn't care what I felt like. I kept putting in the plates hoping for answers, but it was just all information I already knew. She said she hoped to consider me a friend. It's such a quiet part of dialogue, but it's just so strong. Maybe it's because I struggled to make friends throughout school, and I clung on to the groups that I somehow got adopted into. Solanum gives me the same energy. They were alone in the storm of the Quantum Moon. They made it to their goal, but they were alone. You have to leave Solanum eventually. You have to get on with the game, get on with the story, try and save everyone. You don't know if you'll see her again outside of this Quantum Moon. You have to wake up again. When I left the Quantum Moon, it felt a little useless. I didn't really gain any information. It was just her. At that point, I was more interested in the history of the world than the characters. Solanum doesn't know how to end the game. Solanum doesn't know how to get to the eye of the universe. Solanum doesn't know how to stop the sun from exploding. She doesn't know anything. But looking back now, it doesn't matter that she didn't know anything. What matters is that I met her. I invited her to the campfire. She didn't have a signal scope or an instrument. It's the person that really matters. Okay, I have to admit to something. I'm a fraud. I never actually seriously touched the interloper during my actual playthrough. I'm really sorry. But that's okay, because I searched the entire place when I played again for this video. There's not much here, but I thought that inherently it's important to mention why the Nomai disappeared, and why inherently Outer Wilds is a unique sci-fi story. So in a lot of sci-fi stories, the previous aliens and such were killed by their own creations. Maybe the Nomai were killed by the gravity tubes malfunctioning. Maybe the Nomai fell off the hanging city? Then why are all the skeletons still around the city? I'm gonna lose it. Oh, also the ice. You get to slippy slidey. But also, I wonder when this goes away. The temperature gauge was a hint. I'm in the tunnels. I am in your walls. Holy smokes, they are slippery. Whee! Oh, also, remember to dodge the ghost matter. And after all of that, you find another Nomai, and a recording that tells us that this one sacrificed themselves to save the others, and that this is where the ghost matter came from. The flower in front of them seemingly bloomed into a deadly seed pod. This is what killed the Nomai. It would have killed them whether or not they researched it, whether or not they came to the interloper. These great beings with technology that the Harthians built off of. When the Harthians were literal sardines, they were exploring the galaxy, killed by a plague, a cloud of pure death that spread across their settlements. And in this crisis of realizing the fact, in this twist that these beings were just killed, no big hubris, I accidentally fly back into the ghost matter, killing me and resetting the loop. God, this game is so silly at times. Fine, I'll talk about it. So the first time I tried to go to Dark Bramble, I missed the entrance. I thought it was just too small to get the ship in. So the next time, I went in with my suit. Just my suit. Not my ship, just my suit. And it was quiet. Really quiet. It wasn't really white, though. It was gray. It was the void. Wait, no, I want to go back! There was lights in the void and my gamer senses kicked in, so I flew towards them. There was a moment of slowness, and I could see that I was going through another seed, and it spat me out, in another void. The lights were slightly different, but it was the same, really, and so I kept flying. I didn't fly towards the red orbs, those seemed dangerous, strange, and probably deadly. But I kept flying. Maybe I could find feldspar, something about the Nomai, something. There has to be something other than these lights. I never encountered the anglerfish. I eventually ran out of fuel, and then finally oxygen, and it all went black. I eventually went back to Dark Bramble, scared as I was, and figured I could get the ship into it. Finally, the static electricity brain is really showing itself. I only realized I could use my signal scope to find my way through when I was panicking and hit the key accidentally. With the signal heard, I rushed straight ahead, only to hear a noise. I didn't see it, only its teeth. That's the puzzle box of Dark Bramble. Finding the places, dodging the fish, and trying not to piss your pants. Dark Bramble is the end. It's the furthest away from the sun, of course, so it's at the end of the solar system chart anyway. But in a sense, stepwise, it's the end. But you have to try again, and this time I put together that the anglerfish were blind, because, you know, foreshadowing! Which is probably why they didn't come after me when I suffocated in the fog in only my suit. And so, with the ship, you have to pay very, very close attention to the little silly thing over here. It indicates how much thrust your thrusters are giving, meaning how much noise you're giving off. Meaning you have to go slow, which for my ultra-killed Titanfall 2 addled brain was a difficult thing. But even speedrunners have to slow down during this portion. But you get through it. You have to. And keep following the signal scope. The signal scope leads you along through the small dots that are stars, portals, seeds. I don't see them as one or the other. And suddenly you find the seed that leads to the harmonica. It's feldspar. Feldspar has the most metal camp ever. It's the skeleton of an anglerfish. He is surviving in a skeleton. His sparking ship is nearby, but in the void, it's his home. Home away from home. Sweet home ship. But the ship's broken, so that doesn't even work. What am I saying? There's trees, there's a fire, it's a campsite in the cold void, in the unoxygenated whiteness. It's surprisingly comfy, though being the arguably farthest away from the rest of the travelers. Some of them think he's gone for good, he's so far away. But he still plays his harmonica, still plays the same song as everybody else. There's another ship in this void. Well, it's more like it landed in the worst place ever. It's the third Nomai escape ship. There's bodies floating along. Maybe they ran out of oxygen like me originally. Maybe the impact killed most of them right off the bat. The string of bodies, however, leads you to the seed that leads you to the vessel. Digging through the thick fog of this area, you find a pristine and perfect ship. Sure, it's a little crooked, but it's still good. You just gotta, maybe it'll fly, it'll be fine. Inside the ship, there's more info about the Nomai, but whenever my slow butt got there, the music started, and suddenly the panic has to set in. But we'll talk about ending the game soon. But aside from that, this ship is a vessel. It's where all the escape pods came from, leading me to believe that the previous string of Nomai lights and dead bodies were trying to reach back to the vessel, and now that you've found the vessel, you can end the game. Dark Bramble, along with being a puzzle box on how to not pee your pants, I would argue is about finding old parts of a friendship. Either friends you lost contact with, or maybe old activities you used to do, and finding peace in the quiet horror of time moving along. You can still enjoy these activities despite, the fog. Feldspar is thought to be dead, and yet, you hit it off with him. He's one of your friends. He ends up around the campfire with you anyway. And yet, he doesn't want to go back to Timberhearth. Yes, by the next loop, he would be back in the skeleton, and yet, even with the option to ask him, he's okay with the quiet and with the peace. And I think that's the beauty of it. While the Hourglass twins represent the quiet moment between friends of the shared horror of waiting, Dark Bramble is the quiet of peace and acceptance. Feldspar is thought to be dead, living in the horrific fog. No! And yet, he's making it work. He's happy. Placing what type of narrative The Outer Wilds is hard. A character-driven story is usually about a character's inner struggle to make a decision, and a plot-driven story is more about the world and story itself. It's a question on what affects you more as a person, the world or the story itself. Depending on who plays the game, it might be one or the other, depending on who you are, depending on how you've lived. I know for myself, the middle of the game, I was more fascinated by the history of the solar system rather than the characters. But the ending made me cry, because those characters were gone in a world. Sure, you could load a save, but is that really right? All of them sitting around the campfire playing a single song. It really affected me. Sure, you can go through the entire game and just never talk to anyone, but the developers made it really useful. They tell you what they know. They give you important information. Even I, who struggles to talk to new people, would try and talk to everyone when I got the chance. I'm invested in these characters, even if there isn't a confidant system like Persona. Maybe not Gabbro, but we do try. Well, look at that, I guess I'm wrong. You end the game by doing 3 steps. 1. Collect the warp core. This is a AA battery that you have to resist the urge to eat and put in the power slot for the vessel. 2. Enter the code that you found in the core of Giant's Deep. You know, the funny little thing that I'm sure aren't coordinates, but they probably are. They're probably just situational coordinates. Look, I can tell you about geometry. 3. Cry. I didn't follow the rule about crying, though. I know that this is an emotional ending. It did evoke an emotion, and I think the correct word for it was comfort. And so, I sat in silence, listening to the melody that had greeted me at the start, and suddenly, you're back at the museum again. Back looking at the first semblance of the stars and the solar system model. And then, you're gone, dropping through the endless portals of you over and over and over again, watching as the lights go out in the forest. These are inherently dread-inducing things. And yet, this was the weighted blanket I had been waiting for. The absurd reality we live in can't be understood, and that's okay. Speedrunners can't get through this section any faster than you can. They're stuck watching the stars go out like you or I. The slow descent of dread is comfortable to me. If it wasn't obvious already from the multiple very stupid jokes, I'm part of Gen Z. The doom is already pretty familiar to me. Worst yet, I was told all my life that I was gifted until I started getting B's in chemistry. That's right, baby, I'm unfunny and a gifted kid burnout. I've actually thought I wanted to be a genetic engineer all my life. Fix cancer, figure out how to help my aunt who had a heavy gluten allergy for some reason. And I'm not saying we shouldn't fix these. And inherently someone will, but it won't be me. And that's okay. This game is about the end of the world, and that it's okay to let it go, because you've made friends along the way, and as corny as that sounds, it's literally the power of friendship. It's the power of the memories, of the stupid stuff you've done, like getting crushed by an island. As you get to the campfire, you collect things that represent each traveler. For Solanum, it's a keyboard. For Rybeck, it's his banjo, of course. Feldspar's harmonica, Chert's drum set, Gabbro's flute.
This song is new to me, but I'm honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, this should be cool.
Well, then, here I go.
Here goes nothing.
You got it. I'll do my best.
And around the campfire, you have the friends you met. This game made me realize I want to be a history teacher. The human relationships that you can participate in, like friend and friend, and the ones you can't, like when you're studying somebody who's long dead and buried, or the ones you can guide, like watching a student learn. It's what pushes me to be better. It's what I truly value in life. The characters around you know that this is the end. The music is a form of normality. It's what greets you at the start of the game. When you play music, you put part of your heart and soul into it. These are the characters personified in music, and with this music, you get a loop. It's what greets you at the start of the game. It's what sends you off into the end. Outer Wilds is a game that wants to teach you what it values in life.
I believe we've reached the end of our journey. All that remains is to collapse the innumerable possibilities before us. Are you ready to learn what comes next? It's tempting to linger in this moment while every possibility still exists, but unless they are collapsed by an observer, they will never be more than possibilities.
People, relationships, and memories.
I tell you what, this has been really fun. And I gotta help make something pretty cool. So I've got no complaints. I mean, not me exactly, but close enough. It's the kind of thing that makes you glad you stopped and smelled the pine trees along the way, you know?
All weave in and out of each other.
Even if it's over now, I had a good time learning, but I think the rules are about to change.
Creating our world, the vision we have of ourselves, and the vision of others.
You cut it a little close, don't you think? Well, it worked out at the end, I suppose. I hope there's beasties in the next one.
Without others in our life, we are nothing.
I learned a lot by the end of everything. The past is the past now, but that's okay. It's never really gone completely. The future is always built on the past, even if we won't get to see it. Still, it's, time for something new now.
With others, we create everything. A new universe is created through the memories of those around you, of the music built between people, of the relationships that you and the others hold. And after the final goodbyes, you have to jump in, and so, a new universe is made. And that's okay.
Oh, that just made me cough.
I handle nothing, I guess.
I don't voice act, if you haven't noticed. There's our pilot, back from your pre-launch count. That's not a word.
Ooh, there's some over here.
Hold on.
tell you what, this has been really fun, and I gotta help make something pretty cool.